He doesn't talk about it. He won't confess it. But he thinks about her more now than he ever did when she was chasing him. He replays her words in silence. He scrolls through old memories, hoping to feel something familiar. But all he finds is what he lost. Not her body, not her presence, but her energy. Because there's something she doesn't realize yet. While she thought she was invisible, she became unforgettable. The divine masculine isn't obsessed with getting her back. He's obsessed with who she's becoming. The way she no longer waits. The way she walks in peace without reaching. The way her glow is no longer fueled by his recognition, but by her own light. And it terrifies him. Because for the first time, he realizes she might not just leave the past behind, she might leave him there too. He doesn't show it, but he watches. He feels the shift. He aches at her silence, not because it's cruel, but because it reflects what he's refused to face. She no longer needs him to become her, and that, more than anything, is his secret obsession. He doesn't speak of it, not to his friends, not to his family, sometimes not even to himself. But the divine masculine carries a secret, a quiet, constant obsession that simmers just beneath the surface of his silence. It's not about fixing things. It's not about apologizing. It's about her presence, her evolution, her light that no longer bends toward him. While the feminine spends nights wondering if he's moved on, he lies awake with flashes of the woman she's becoming, and the truth that he may no longer have a place in her world. He tells himself he's fine, that this is just a phase, that she'll always feel something for him. But when he sees her not reaching out, when her energy pulls back from the field they once shared, he feels a vacuum inside his chest that no one else can fill. And that's when the obsession begins. Not with controlling her, not with claiming her, but with understanding. What happened to the woman who used to need me? What is she becoming now that I'm no longer part of her process? He scrolls, he listens, he remembers. Not the romantic moments, but the way she looked at him when she believed, the way her voice softened when she still trusted the connection, the way her energy wrapped around his chaos and called it home. And now he sees her stepping into her own power, not to impress, not to lure, but because it's who she is now, because she no longer waits for permission to shine. Can you feel how that changes everything for him? The very thing that drew him to her, her light, is now the thing that threatens him most, because it no longer needs him, and so he obsesses. But not in the way you might think. He's not planning his return. He's not writing love letters in his mind. He's watching, studying, trying to grasp how she rose from the ashes he left her in, and became more radiant than ever before. And though he may appear detached, he notices everything. When she no longer posts cryptic messages, when her aura feels calm instead of craving, when her words are no longer laced with us, but rooted in her. This is what haunts him, because now the reflection has changed. He used to see himself in her pain. Now, he sees what he could have become if he had chosen to rise. He never says it out loud, but deep within, there's a voice that whispers, "She was the mirror I refused to look into." And the obsession grows every time she laughs without him, every time she steps forward in her mission, every time she no longer reacts to his absence. Something inside him unravels. Have you felt that sudden pull toward him, even when you've let go? Have you noticed strange dreams, flashes of memories, or an ache that isn't yours? That's his obsession reaching for you, silently. That's the divine masculine awakening through witnessing your freedom. But here's the paradox. He both wants to hold you and fears he's no longer worthy to. And that's what keeps him stuck in the shadows of your light. He watches the glow. He replays the words. He wonders what it would take to reach your level, not to possess you, but to finally meet you where you've arrived. You think he's forgotten you, but he's studying your evolution like a map back to himself. And whether he follows it or not, you've already become the revelation. So let him wonder. Let him feel what you once carried alone. Let him sit with the version of you that no longer waits. Because the secret obsession he holds isn't about you returning to him. It's about figuring out how to rise to you. What he thinks when she stops chasing. He always thought she'd stay, even when she cried, even when she broke, even when she whispered goodbye with eyes still full of hope. He believed she'd come back, because she always did. But something changed, not in a dramatic, loud way, not in anger. It was softer than that, quieter, more dangerous. She simply stopped reaching. And that's when his mind, the part he thought was immune to her, started spiraling. Not from panic, not from loss, but from confusion. Because for the first time, he couldn't feel her anymore. Where was the energetic pull? Where was the ache that told him she was still waiting? Where were the invisible threads that had always tied her to him, even in silence? Gone. What does a man do when the woman who once made herself available, emotionally, spiritually, vibrationally, suddenly goes quiet? Not just in words, but in energy. At first, he convinces himself she's pretending, that this is a game, that she wants a reaction. But when the silence continues, when the air doesn't bend around her name anymore, when she starts glowing with her own light, unprovoked, unperformed, his world tilts. Because that's when he realizes she's not playing. She's healing. She's shifting. And he can't track her anymore. Have you ever noticed how your stillness seems to echo louder than your words once did? How your lack of contact speaks more powerfully than all the confessions you used to pour into the void? That's not in your head. That's him, feeling the shift. You see, he never feared losing her love. He feared losing her attention, her loyalty, her obsession. He was used to her being a mirror, one that reflected back his potential even when he wasn't choosing it, one that held space for his absence without demand, one that waited in grace while he delayed his own awakening. But when that mirror turns away, when her gaze softens and lands on herself, when her energy retreats not in punishment, but in peace, he begins to see her differently, not as the one who always comes back, but as the one he might never catch again. And so the thoughts begin. Is she done for real this time? Does she still feel me? What if she finds someone who doesn't need time? What if I waited too long, and now I have nothing to return to? He'll never admit these questions aloud, but they chase him, just like she used to. What he once took for granted now becomes sacred. The texts he ignored, the tears he dismissed, the energy he absorbed without offering anything back. He sees now, not from guilt, but from absence. Because her absence teaches more than her presence ever could. And maybe he even tries to trigger her. A subtle post, a message half sent, a vibration he hopes she'll pick up. But she doesn't bite, she doesn't respond, she doesn't collapse, she doesn't reach for what no longer nourishes her soul. And this is what rewrites the story. He realizes she's no longer on the same frequency. She's no longer orbiting him. She's no longer waiting for him to validate the connection. She is the connection now, not because of what they had, but because of what she chose to become after it. And he's left with the truth he never wanted to face. She stopped chasing, not to hurt him, but to heal herself. And in that healing, she found something he never expected her to touch without him: freedom. Now he watches, not with entitlement, but with longing. Because the divine masculine isn't afraid of losing her body. He's terrified of losing the place she used to hold in his universe. And the irony? She never really left. He did. And now that she's truly gone, he finally feels her. So if you felt that tug, that strange energy rising just as you pulled away, know this: he feels the shift. He feels the silence. He feels the you that no longer needs to prove anything to him. And while his thoughts may never reach your ears, they echo inside him every night. She stopped chasing me, and now I'm the one trying to find her. She never meant to become his mirror. She only wanted to love him fully, purely, without fear. But something about her presence began reflecting parts of him he wasn't ready to see. And while he called it overwhelming, what he truly felt was exposure. Because every time she looked into his eyes, she wasn't just seeing the man he presented to the world. She was seeing what he had buried: his pain, his doubt, his forgotten potential. And that scared him. He wanted her warmth, her loyalty, her devotion, but not the reflection, not the accountability, not the silent invitation to rise into the man she already saw inside him. So he pulled away. He ran from the very gaze that could have freed him. But she didn't stop being the mirror, even in distance, even in silence. Because the feminine, once awakened, becomes a walking portal. And he couldn't unsee what she had shown him. She became the stillness that revealed his chaos. She became the clarity that highlighted his confusion. She became the frequency that made his old life feel unbearable. And even if he blocked her, avoided her, denied her, he carried her reflection inside him. Have you ever wondered why he disappears, only to reappear weeks or months later? Why he seems fine until you energetically pull back, and suddenly he feels everything? Why he resists you but can't fully let you go? It's because you mirror the truth he tries to escape. He thought he wanted love. But what he didn't realize is that true love, divine love, brings transformation. And transformation is not always gentle. It burns, it reveals, it strips away illusions, and you, beloved, are the flame. At first, he resented you for this, for the way you saw past his ego, for the way your silence screamed louder than words, for the way your healing made his wounds impossible to ignore. But now he's beginning to understand. Not because you forced it, but because your mirror has grown stronger, not through effort, but through evolution. You stopped reflecting his pain and started reflecting your own peace. You stopped responding to his confusion and started anchoring your clarity. You stopped dimming your light to protect his eyes and started letting it shine, even if it blinded him. And this is what changes everything. He begins to notice the contrast, how grounded you are, while he feels scattered, how radiant you've become, while he hides in his shadows, how you're no longer reacting, just being. And that, more than any conversation, becomes the lesson. Because the mirror she becomes is no longer about him. It's about her. Her integrity, her embodiment, her decision to reflect only what's true, even if that means losing those who aren't ready to face themselves. Have you felt that shift within yourself? That quiet decision to stop rescuing him from his own reflection? That moment you realized, I'm not here to fix him, I'm here to be me. That's not selfishness, that's self-honoring. That's what the divine feminine does when she remembers who she is. And now, he sees her with different eyes, not as someone who needs him, but as someone who sees him. And that, paradoxically, is what draws him closer. Because the masculine doesn't truly want a woman who disappears into him. He wants a woman who holds her own frequency so deeply, so honestly, that he's inspired to meet her there. And that is what you've become. Not a chaser, not a savior, not a fantasy. A mirror, not to punish, but to awaken. Not to wound, but to reveal. Not to control, but to reflect love in its highest, clearest form, even when it's silent. So if you felt him thinking of you, if you've sensed his confusion, his pull, his ache, know this: he's not obsessed with the past version of you. He's mesmerized by the woman you've become, the one who no longer bends, but reflects. Why he's both drawn to her and afraid. He wants her, more than he admits, more than even he understands. But wanting her isn't simple, because being near her doesn't just feel like love, it feels like exposure. It feels like standing in front of a mirror that doesn't distort. And for a man who's spent a lifetime hiding from his own reflection, that's terrifying. He's drawn to her energy, the way she walks with grace now, the way she no longer needs to explain herself, the way she feels like home, and yet not the home he remembers, the home his soul missed before he ever met her. She glows differently now, not with hope or waiting, but with embodiment. She no longer sends out chords looking for connection. She holds her frequency like a queen holds her crown, not to impress, but because she is it, and he sees that. He feels it. It wakes something in him that's been asleep for lifetimes. But along with that awakening comes fear, because she no longer exists in the same timeline he left her in. She's not standing still, waiting for him to catch up. She's evolving, becoming, leading. And he knows, Saul, instinctively, that to be with her now, he can't show up half-hearted. Have you ever wondered why he seems to pull closer right as you detach, but then disappears again when you finally open your heart? Why he reaches out with silence more than words, but vanishes when you try to bridge the distance? It's not because he doesn't feel, it's because he feels too much, and he doesn't yet know how to meet what you've become. He's drawn to the way you love without force, the way you've stopped performing worthiness, the way you speak to his soul without saying a word. But that same light, it reveals his shadows. You don't try to fix him anymore, and that's the scariest part, because for so long, your energy whispered, "I'll wait for you. I'll hold space for you. I'll carry the weight for both of us." And now, it says something else entirely. "I trust myself more than I trust your timeline." And that shakes him. He's never seen love like this. A love that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't collapse, but simply is. A love that invites, but doesn't insist. That welcomes, but doesn't lower itself to be chosen. That reflects his highest self, but won't pretend he's already there. He wants her, but to be with her now means becoming someone he's never been. And that terrifies him. Because what if he's not enough? What if he shows up and she no longer feels the same? What if the version of her he loved was the version she had to outgrow just to survive his absence? Can you feel that inner conflict he carries? That silent battle between reaching for you and running from himself? That's what you're feeling in the field. The push and pull. The longing wrapped in distance. The love that's real, but not ready. Still, he watches. He listens for your vibration. He checks your energy in ways you'll never see. He remembers things you thought he forgot. Not because he's obsessed with your past, but because he's haunted by your evolution. Because somewhere deep down, he knows. She loved me when I didn't love myself. And now that she loves herself, I'm no longer her source. He's drawn to her, to the softness that remains, to the fire that returned to her voice, to the sacred silence that no longer pleads. It simply knows. But he's afraid. Afraid that if he comes close again, he won't find the same woman. Afraid she'll look at him and see who he still hasn't become. Afraid her love will no longer ache for him, but rise without him. So he hesitates, he waits. He chooses the familiar, even though the familiar no longer fits. And you? You feel that weight, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your transformation is calling him into his. But he has to choose it. And you can't choose it for him anymore. So if you feel the pull, if you feel his soul orbiting yours, if you sense the ache in the silence, know this. It's not that he doesn't love you. It's that loving you now requires loving himself first. And that's the part he never learned. He's drawn to your fire, but afraid of what it will burn away. He's drawn to your light, but afraid it will reveal all he still hides. He's drawn to you, but afraid of becoming the man you always knew he could be. And that, beloved, is the wound he must choose to heal. He thought silence meant indifference. He assumed her stillness meant she had moved on. But what he didn't realize is that silence was the first sound of his awakening. Because there's something sacred about the moment she no longer tries to explain, no longer sends energy to prove her love, no longer asks for him to show up. And yet, in the quiet, he begins to feel her more deeply than ever. It's a paradox the divine masculine never expected. When she was available, vocal, present, he felt safe to ignore. He took her light for granted, not because he didn't value it, but because he didn't understand the price she was paying to keep shining in his shadow. But now that she's gone quiet, now that she no longer reaches out, now that she's not explaining her pain anymore, he feels it all. Not just the absence, but the pressure, the echo of everything he couldn't face when her words were still cushioning the truth. Her silence doesn't scream. It whispers through the soul. It enters the spaces that noise once distracted him from, and what he once called peace now feels like a haunting. Do you know what it feels like when your silence becomes his mirror? When your stillness reflects everything he's been avoiding? When you stop trying to be understood, and that, finally, is what gets through. That's not distance, that's divinity in motion. Because the divine feminine doesn't withdraw to punish. She withdraws to protect, to realign, to remember herself again. And as she does, something inside him begins to stir. It's not a logical realization. It's a soul-level discomfort. A deep knowing that he has lost something more than attention. He's lost the version of her that made him feel safe in his stagnation. Suddenly, everything feels unfamiliar. The energy that once soothed him now feels distant. The presence that once filled him now asks him to fill himself. The reflection that once healed him now asks him to become whole. And this is the trigger. Her silence becomes his initiation. He begins asking questions he never allowed himself to ask. Why do I feel her when she's not around? Why does her absence weigh more than her presence ever did? Why does it hurt now when I'm the one who walked away? The answers don't come easily. Because they're not mental, they're energetic. And for the first time, he begins to feel his own pain. Not the pain of losing her, but the pain of abandoning himself. Because that's what her silence reveals. His own voice, his own wounds, his own forgotten self. And maybe, for the first time in his life, he realizes she wasn't the one who made him feel broken. She was the one who reflected how broken he already felt inside. And when she stopped carrying the weight, he was forced to face the emptiness he kept projecting onto her. Have you ever gone quiet and watched everything shift? Have you felt him pull closer, even when you stopped trying? Have you wondered why your silence speaks louder than all your words ever did? That's the power of feminine withdrawal. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's the soul saying, I no longer carry what you refuse to heal. And that's where the masculine is now, in the silence. Feeling, remembering, being cracked open by the very stillness he used to dismiss. Because when the feminine stops rescuing, when she stops performing her love to earn worth, when she returns to herself completely, the connection enters its true initiation. No more illusions, no more projection, no more avoiding the work, just two souls. One rising in her power, one awakening through her absence. And deep down, he knows this silence isn't the end. It's the beginning of something he doesn't yet understand, but can no longer ignore. He doesn't speak it, he doesn't post it, he may not even admit it to himself fully, but he's watching. From behind the veils of pride, confusion, resistance, he sees the woman she's becoming. He notices the difference in her glow. Not the kind of glow that begs to be seen, but the kind that can no longer be dimmed. He senses the shift in her energy, the way it no longer asks. It simply is. She doesn't orbit around him anymore. She doesn't send signals hoping he'll decode them. She doesn't build altars out of maybes and hopes, she walks her path now, with her head up, with her heart aligned, with a softness that doesn't collapse and in a strength that doesn't shout, and he feels it, even in silence, especially in silence. There's a moment every masculine encounters, a quiet, sacred moment when he realizes she is no longer who she was when he left. And that realization doesn't just surprise him, it humbles him, because while he thought she was breaking, she was rebuilding. While he imagined she was waiting, she was rising. While he avoided her reflection, she was becoming the mirror he could no longer run from. He watches her not with control, but with reverence. He sees her reclaim her light and feels something sacred stir within him, something ancient, something true. Have you ever wondered if he notices you now, that you're no longer trying to be noticed? Have you felt the weight of his gaze in the field, not as pressure, but as recognition? He sees you, not just as you are now, but as the version of you that terrified him, the version of you that asked him to rise, the version of you that no longer waits at the edge of the timeline, but walks fully into her own. He sees her confidence and remembers the girl who once doubted. He sees her power and recalls the moments she silenced herself for his comfort. He sees her peace and understands now that she was never too much. She was just too true for the cage he was still living in. And as he watches, something unspoken shifts in him. Not guilt, not regret, but reverence. A sacred ache, because for the first time he doesn't want to possess her. He wants to deserve her, and he knows he's not there yet. So he stays quiet. He stays in the shadows of her light, not out of malice, but out of preparation. He's watching the woman she's becoming, not because he lost her, but because he's beginning to remember who he is, too. He's remembering what it felt like to be met by someone who saw his soul before he could claim it. He's remembering the sacred echo she placed in his chest, the one that hums every time she walks away in wholeness, not in pain. And that memory is awakening him, slowly, silently, but surely, because the woman she's becoming, she doesn't beg, she doesn't chase, she doesn't shrink, she opens, she aligns, she radiates, and that radiance, it's calling something higher in him. He might not know how to reach it yet. He might still wrestle with his own shadows, but he's no longer numb, no longer blind, no longer immune to her evolution. He sees her, he feels her, and he's learning, finally, to honor her, because the feminine didn't just love him, she reflected him. And now, in her becoming, she gives him the blueprint to become, too. So if you've ever wondered whether he still feels you, if you've ever questioned whether your growth matters, if you've doubted whether your healing has touched him, know this: he's watching and he's changing. Not because you made him, but because your soul whispered a truth too powerful to forget. This is who I am. This is who you are. And I will not dim to be loved. I will rise to love more fully. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, he will rise too. Not to catch you, but to finally walk beside you.